you go. Okay. Uh,
Um,
okay. So, hi, Katie. Thanks for joining me. I'm excited to learn about your experience mushroom foraging. So,
Thanks for having me. Yeah.
yeah, take your time with your answers. I'm just kind of here to learn from your expertise and enjoy our chat. So, my first question is, how did you get into mushroom foraging?
Yeah, so I guess I first started getting into mushroom foraging just through friends. It seemed to be kind of like an interesting hobby that interesting people I knew were taking up, and I was able to, um, when doing like a bit of camping, um, join a friend who knew how to find chanterelles, which was they're fairly simple to kind of identify and spot. So that was sort of my first experience doing a bit of mushroom foraging. Um, and then I guess later on, I decided to sort of like go out on my own. I happened to be on field work for a couple months in an area that's fairly well known for mushrooms. So I just kind of bought a couple of field guides and decided to go out and see what was out there. And I was lucky enough to find some really nice specimens for edibles and be able to kind of compare to the field guide and figure out what they were.
That's cool.
Yeah, luckily no adverse, poisoning or anything like that. So,
What do you do with the mushrooms when you get them? Do you pick them or just
um,
spot them?
sorry.
Do you pick them or do you just view them, like spot them and say that you've seen them? Or do you pick them?
Oh, yeah. I guess typically nowadays I would forage for food. I think when I first started out, um, doing a lot of the ID was kind of maybe more um, yeah, of a target. Just kind of understanding which mushrooms were around and getting better sense of like how to identify them. Now that I am a bit more experienced, I'm not as interested in that, and I'm more looking just to forage for edibles. And so I pick them, and then I either give them to friends or family, or I'll eat them myself and store them in different ways. So.
That's cool. How are you storing them? Are there different ways?
Um, yeah, it would depend on the mushroom, but typically I think most of them we would dehydrate them. And that's kind of an easy way to do it, to just slice them up and put them in a dehydrator and on a low setting. Um, for certain ones, it's also recommended to kind of do a freeze. If you do a dry fries, a dry fry and get the moisture out first, you can freeze them and then kind of still retain the texture rather than frying them, or sorry, rather than just freezing them raw. I think a lot of the mushrooms don't hold up to that.
Mm,
But there are certain species that you can freeze raw and they will still defrost in a nice way. When you cook them, they'll taste great.
that's neat. Um, how do you prepare for a foraging trip? Is there a kit or a checklist?
Um, yeah, I guess to prepare for a foraging trip, I don't really have a specific checklist that anyone else has sort of not like technically developed, but just things that we normally prepare for going outdoors.
Mhm.
Obviously, bear sprays, good to have. All of like the essentials for when any type of hiking, like first aid kits, extra water, that sort of thing.
Mhm.
For mushroom specific foraging trips, I guess it is also helpful to have I guess like just bags to carry your mushrooms in. Some pickers will use buckets with holes poked into them. Just if they're picking more commercially and they want to be able to keep the shape of the mushrooms better. But we just forage, recreationally, so we're not really too concerned with that. And then so it's easier just to use tote bags. And we do typically, yeah, I guess you use those sorts of materials because you do want the the spores from the mushrooms to be able to spread while you're foraging. So you don't want to put them in a plastic bag because then you're doing a disservice to the mushroom. But yeah, I think so. I guess I forgot what other items I was thinking of. So yeah, I guess like mushroom knives, um, maybe put your mushrooms in, maybe an identification guide as well. But yeah, mostly just like the typical things you'd bring when you're normally going outside.
Do you cut them or do you pick pick them or dig
Um,
them out?
typic yeah, I think mostly I would pick them. I know there can be some debate over like cutting mushrooms versus pulling them out. Um, but that I think there's like a lot of old wives' tales or that sort of thing where people think that you have to cut them in order not to just to damage the mushroom, but um, that's sort of been proven to be false. So it doesn't actually matter what did you use. I think for a lot of mushrooms, if you're IDing mushrooms and you're unfamiliar, it is to pull them out all the way because of some of the ID characteristics might be at the base of the mushroom.
Mm.
So that, if you're not pulling it out all the way, you might be missing something.
Yeah.
Um, but if you're familiar with it and you just kind of don't want the hassle of potentially getting too much dirt on your mushroom, cutting can be a better option. Although I have heard that and colloquially, some folks think that maybe cutting actually is worse because that leaves like a part of the mushroom to decay in the ground and then mold um, more quickly spreading to like the rest of the mycelium or other maybe smaller mushrooms that are growing. So um, that's sort of a consideration between
Wow.
cutting versus plucking a mushroom.
That's sounds like a big debate.
Yeah, it's mostly just folks who are not as familiar with this, like the scientific literature than men versus folks who just have more
Yeah.
um, on the land knowledge, and it's just things that have been passed down that way.
Neat. Um, and then you said you were on a field trip recently where there was a lot of mushrooms. Are there defined good places to go? Or do you just walk around? Or do you know where you're going?
Yeah, I think a lot, like for myself, I would have specific areas that we've been to and we've sort of over the years discovered to be a good area. So yes, I guess there are places we know where we are wanting to go to look for mushrooms if we're looking for specific types. But you can also, if you're in an area you're familiar with, kind of just use some of the features of the forest that you're in to understand whether or not you might be in a good area to find mushrooms. So depending on the species, I guess you can kind of look at different forest covers on some of the public data sets and understand what the dominant tree species is, and then use that to sort of narrow down your search of where you want to go, or even just looking at satellite imagery and kind of noticing like the different textures and the density of the forest, whether or not if there's like a lot of barren earth in the satellite imagery, you're obviously not going to be going there. Um, and then I think other things you might consider when you're looking to just kind of find new areas to look in, I guess. Yeah, I guess mostly forest cover and then like maybe elevation and slope depending on like the time of year, or the time of the season.
Mhm. It
So kind of
sounds
looking
like
at
your
topographical maps.
your scientific knowledge helps with this.
Yeah, I think it can be helpful and that can be a helpful way to kind of approach it. But I don't think it's necessarily something that's required. I think it's that people can under yeah, people will understand even if they don't have a science background. Just with navigation has been done for years.
Yeah,
um,
that's neat.
and I think if you don't have like you're not looking at map data sets, you can also just if you're just familiar with the forest around you and you know sort of colloquially where things
Mhm.
are. Um, yeah, that's sort of it's I think it's better to even just to know where forests are like than it is to kind of comb through data sets because I don't know how accurate they always are. So
that's neat. It's good. It sounds like a field open for all kinds of different people.
Yeah, definitely for sure.
Um, and what's the most exciting or unusual mushroom you've ever found?
The most exciting or unusual mushroom. Uh, I don't really know that. I don't think I can specifically answer that. I don't think I have one that has been particularly memorable for me. A lot of the ones that we found now are repeats, and we find them kind of every year.
Mm-hmm.
So we're looking for some of the same edible mushrooms. But I think I have a favorite mushroom to find, and that would be the Matsutake mushroom. Um, and that's sort of the North American version of the matsutake mushroom that they would have in Japan. So we've got a North American species, Phycaloma marillianum, I believe, is what they have classified it to now. But it kind of mimics the same um, characteristics of like the typical matsutake of Japan. We have
Why
a
is it your favorite?
American version. Oh, it's because I guess it's just like a very fun mushroom to find, like the way that it hides under the ground and smells very distinctive, and it's just kind of the way that they grow. They're quite large and they cluster often. So you find a good patch, it just feels like you're finding gold, kind of. So
That's neat. Have you ever had a close call with a poisonous mushroom?
I haven't had an issue with like eating one. But we have found poisonous mushrooms um, that some folks might consider to be a lookalike when we're looking for matsutake. So there's a poisonous Amanita smithiana, that grows here in BC that will grow in the same habitat as a matsutake mushroom. And I found those like, within like inches of each other.
Hmm.
Um, like obviously that's something that you have to be aware of if you're looking for matsutake mushrooms, like knowing the poisonous lookalikes. So it's not really a beginner mushroom if you're not really familiar with like, how the different mushroom textures and all those things that look like, then you should be really hunting for matsutake mushrooms because if you just think that it's a white mushroom, then you're gonna end up eating a lot of random things. Um, yeah, there's definitely a lot of poisonous lookalikes that can get you into trouble,
Yeah,
even in BC. So um, luckily, I haven't had any close calls in terms of, accidentally almost eating one.
that's good. And then once you have them, what do you do with them?
Um, yeah, I guess like once we find the mushrooms, I guess we find a lot, we'll just clean them and process them and then cut them up and freeze them.
Yeah.
Just because obviously you can't cook them all um, right away. Because if you find a lot, it's just too many to have. Yeah, it's nice to give them to friends as well. But yeah, I think they work well in a lot of Asian inspired dishes or Asian dishes, like matsutake gohan, which is like a version of which is basically like steamed rice with like mirin and sake and some other seasonings, and then you just kind of steam the matsutake on there on top, and they just have a nice texture and a nice aroma of their own, so it tastes really it's quite yummy. Um, uh, Otherwise, you can kind of make like maybe like a ramen because flavor is so distinctive.
Mhm.
Having a nice like light clear broth ramen is really nice with the matsutake mushroom. Or maybe with some of like the Thai spices, making like a Thai soup. That's also quite nice. Just kind of like, you know, enhance the flavor, not cover it up because it is so interesting. And that's sort of the point of them.
How do you give them to friends? As just like dehydrated or frozen? Or do you?
Um, no, I would just give them to friends once we pick them, just sort of, and then it's up to them to process them how they want to.
Um, okay, I'm just keeping an eye on time. Let's go to is there something that you wish more people knew about mushrooms?
Is there something that I wish more people knew about mushrooms? Um, Not specifically. I guess what did I wish someone people knew about mushrooms?
Or foraging or
Mhm. I guess there, I
cooking?
mean, this doesn't seem to be as much of an issue these days, but I think in the past there's been a lot of mycophobia, um, known to be sort of in like Western culture. So I think, I guess just spreading the awareness that mushrooms are not scary, and there's a lot of like really, nice, interesting mushrooms out there, and it's safe to eat them. And I think that's sort of caught on a lot in the last couple of years. I think mushrooms in general have just become a very like um, trendy sort of like both like iconography wise, but also like the actual hobby of like mushroom picking or growing or foraging has been kind of more in like the yeah new trendy. So like I don't feel like there's as much of the fear of mushrooms anymore, and I think maybe in yeah media there's been more like popular media like Fantastic Fungi, which is a movie, and as well I think like what was the author's name? Michael Pollan. I think he's a very
Oh
like
yeah.
celebrated author, and he
Yeah.
wrote a book that is talking about mushrooms, even though it's specifically psychedelics. But I think there's just a lot more interest in mushrooms these days. So I think if I wanted folks to know more about mushrooms, it's actually now the opposite. I would want to caution folks that there are poisonous mushrooms. They have to be aware of like different um, ID characteristics before they go out foraging. Um, just to be careful. I think a
Yeah.
lot of people don't, they just delve into something, they jump right in and they don't really delve into like the specifics. They kind of just go off vibes, maybe.
Yeah. It's yeah. Gotta do some research. Um, so what advice would you give to like a newbie, someone who's interested to start foraging somewhere in Canada?
I think the first thing I would tell someone who's interested is to get familiar with the mushrooms in your area.
Mhm.
So finding a good book on mushrooms is super helpful. Uh, Obviously, some that are more popular than others, but I think a lot of them are just like there's one that's very popular on the coast here called All That the Rain Promises and More, and I think that's probably popular with new mushroomers because it's a cute book. But I think sure that folks find something that's regionally specific. That way they can pinpoint the mushrooms that would actually be located where they are. That's definitely something to look at. There's often like a mycological society, it seems like if you're in a large enough center. So finding like, if you can join a mycological society, that's super helpful because you can learn a lot there. Something that I did when I first started getting into mushrooms because they'll have experts who will help you ID, and then having that uh, expertise alongside of you when you're on a foray, that really just helps you,
Right.
not just guess or have the ID right, but actually know
Yeah.
or like have more certainty. I also think that social media, like there's a lot of groups on Facebook and other probably communities that are super helpful for learning more about mushrooms and posting pictures of mushrooms so you are unsure of what they are. You can get an ID that way.
Hmm.
That's another really useful way to learn.
You said, did you say micrological society? Is that how I say it?
Oh yeah, so I guess the study of mushrooms is mycology. So there'll be like here in Vancouver, we have the Vancouver Mycological Society, and that's our, I guess, Mushroom Fungi Society. There's the North American Mycological Association as well, and I assume that there's a lot of different ones across the country, but across the continents as well. I think I'm aware of definitely the Alberta one. So I'm assuming,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's neat.
all the
I
different,
didn't
at
know
least
that that
provinces
was
have
called that.
one. So,
Yeah.
mhm.
Okay, so let's just wrap up with one last question. What one mushroom would you love to see in real life, find or see?
Um, I'm really curious to find like a Psilocybe cyanescens. It's one of the psychedelic mushrooms, but it's just it looks really I've seen a lot of pictures of it online, and it's just has a very interesting kind of texture. It's got like a wavy cat, and it also like bruises blue when you touch it.
Hmm.
And I just think it'd be something really interesting to find because that's something I've been able to find myself. I think it's more um, found in like landscaping areas, and it's just not a very nice place to wander around all the time. So
Yeah,
I haven't really put a lot of effort into looking for them. But very cool mushroom to see in real life,
yeah,
like in the wild.
yeah, that's neat. Do you have a social media account on mushrooms? Or do you post anything?
Oh, no, not really. I just I had just go on Facebook and I follow a lot of different groups, and that's really helpful for
Yeah,
me to understand what mushrooms are out at during what times and uh, see what everyone else is finding and find my own searches that way.
great. Okay, thank you so much. I've learned a lot and I'm hungry and I want to try all of those mushrooms. Um, yeah, I feel like I'm gonna go through our wooded areas. We have a big park close to us, with a bit of a fresh viewpoint, and I'll be looking around for mushrooms.
Nice.
Thank you very much.
For that sort of answered your questions.
Yeah. And then if you think of anything else to tell me, or if I have any other questions, we can get in touch.
Great.
Okay,
Yeah, that sounds good. I think we can always talk later.
cool. Okay, I'll stop the recording.